All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we can go on to the minutes. Whenever you're ready. Anyone see any changes to be made to be moved to the minutes of motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes on its written form.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Keep those minutes open. Yes. We're gonna now on to committees and commissions. Now, last meeting, Charlie made a motion, and I'm reading it from our minutes, that any committee that had unused money in their budget, the finance committee would vote no on funding funds. That motion. And I want to point out that I think everybody has unused money in their budget.
That was unused money greater than what they're asking for.
Yeah.
So,
I believe that's
so the minutes are not accurate. I will entertain a new motion to clarify what we want to do with committees and commissions. Sorry,
for me.
from anyone.
Well, so I move that any committee that has more money in their term in reserve or unused than they are asking for should we should reject the budget and they should come in and defend or defend their request.
Is there a second?
Point of clarification, is this the money in reserve for the previous fiscal year or that plus unspent monies from
Whatever's in the currently in there,
in that sort of account?
whether it's from prior years or current. If it's more than they're asking for, they can only justify it.
The motion is that there are more funds available to them than what they're asking for now. We vote no funding.
That's right.
With the proviso that we will allow them to comment with them their request. All right.
They have more money in their budget than they're
It's not if
requesting.
the reserves exceed their ask.
If they have more money remaining available in 2026 this year than what they're asking for in 2027, based on the information we have been given by the deputy town manager, the motion is that we vote a zero appropriation, but with the proviso that they come in and defend it. That's your vote, my friend.
Yes.
And has been seconded?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion?
I have a question about the implication of this particular one. This would replace the motion which now says anybody with any reserves gets zero.
Anybody with the minutes say anyone with unused money.
So if this passes, we will then discuss individually the budgets for which the reserves are less. Tonight.
That is correct, or they are here.
Gotcha, thank you.
I'm sorry, just more of a point of order, so this is amending or correcting the meeting minutes from the 28th, or are we completely substituting what was voted last meeting on the 28th with what's being proposed right now?
If the motion clarifying what we decided
Okay,
last,
I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't here on the 28th.
any other discussion?
Looks like Sophie has her hand up.
Sophie?
Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone that we should probably pull up the Disability Commission from that, because I think that legally we have to give them at a minimum what we collect in handicap parking fees, and I'm still waiting on that number.
Do you want to amend Charlie's motion to exclude the Commission on Disabilities from that?
Yes, I think so, but I think since I'm on Zoom, I can't do anything in the meeting except say things.
I'll second it.
I move we exclude the disabilities.
I'll second.
All right, I have a question, whether taking this stand, injures our policy, which has been, we do not penalize somebody for not spending. Anyone have any feelings about that? That that's a policy that we don't penalize.
I agree with that.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Probably, no, aren't we just saying you have the funds available already?
Or we're saying you get nothing this year because you didn't
Because
use.
you already have.
You haven't used up last year.
Well, not saying that, I don't want that part of it.
So for an intro,
I think that there's a difference between departments, these committees, for committee, and in some cases, we're not sure if these committees are even doing anything. So I think it's worth, and we're giving them a chance to clarify it. It's not like we're saying, we're saying, come in and tell us what your plans are. It's not necessarily set in stone. If they come in and say, well, no, we have plans to spend it in May, it's a big event, we consider it.
Charlie?
So, I think you're correct, it does diminish that position in general, but this is a year when the manager is asking for cuts all around. And if we're gonna be responsive to that, I think we should avoid sort of automatic approval of subcommittee budgets. I realize the total amount of money we're talking about is probably $100,000 out of $200 million, so maybe we're spending too much time on it, but that's just, I think, in the spirit of the belt tightening that the manager is asking for, that was the concept behind my proposal.
Anything else? Anybody wants to say? No?
Honestly, are we redebating the, I'm not sure where we are in the process, are we redebating the motion, Charlie's?
Actually, I just put out something that we hadn't discussed last
Yeah.
time. But we don't have anything further to discuss and debate, and I'll take a vote first on Sophie's motion to exclude disabilities, and then.
So it's a new motion which made this tonight.
Okay, so can I, so is it appropriate for me to speak on Charlie's like main motion? Is that-
Yeah, and just to clarify, these are the committees that we would be zero. the Transportation Advisory Committee. We,
Okay, second.
so, if anyone wants to make a motion like Sophie to exclude the Traffic Advisory Committee. Sophie. Go.
I believe at the last meeting, Alan, wanted to somehow modify the circumstances to, well, traffic advisory.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe I voted against the main motion, and the reason is I think it's being penny wise, pound foolish. And I'm basing that specifically on feedback I got from a co-chair of a committee saying, oh, so if volunteers have to go through a ringer like that, you're gonna lose all your volunteers. And to me, the committees and the talent we get, I've said this before, the talent we get in the committees are doing such a favor to the taxpayers, and they're such a bargain for the town, that I don't want to do anything to discourage participation in committees. That's why I disagree with the whole premise. I don't know whether that's in order. I mean, maybe it's in order to exempt every one of those committees and would sort of negate one of them. That's my thing. I oppose the whole concept.
I see from the minutes that first, Charlie's motion to reconsider happened, then we excluded tax, and then we approved the tax budget for 1,800. So I believe tax is already funded. Is that correct?
Well, we just have a new motion to reconsider. So I just want to be clear, let's be clean, and if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it for everyone who falls to this category. That's, I want everyone to be clear about, be on the same page with all committees, except now there's been a motion for this to this. So I just want to go through the list of the committees we wish to give them zero.
If this motion fails, I've sort of lost track of where that leaves us.
If the motion fails, then we will do what we used to do, which is, who do we want to come in traditionally, no, we didn't ask anyone to come in unless they were asking for more money or the amount was of significance to us, or what they happen to be doing at that particular conference. So, if Charlie's motion fails, we'll just go through all of the committees styles. I just want to list who we are going to vote 0 for if Charlie's motion passes. Transportation Advisory Committee. Alan?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, reinforce what I think Alan said, that these committees are an incredible bargain for us. We rarely increase them. In other words, there are committees there that could go through 5 or 10 years and never be increased, like normal budgets usually get a 2, 3, 4% increase. You know, these are all volunteers, and I think the policy that we've had in the past is, you know, you don't have to come in unless you want an increase, with the exception of 2 of the larger ones. I think they're arts and culture, and I can't remember the other one that's over 25,000. I even sort of disagreed with the managers, you know, 10% cut across the board, but you know, that's okay. It happens occasionally. So I think we should return to the former policy of just going with the manager's requests unless they want an increase, and just hearing the 2 larger ones. You know, in most of the numbers that we've seen for this year, they're only 6 months. A lot of these budgets don't get you know, spent until towards the second 6 months. I've already heard of 1 or 2 that are going to be expending their entire balances by June. So I'd like to support Alan, and I think his opposition to this, if I heard it correctly. Thank you.
Yeah, you said it better.
And if I could, that was sort of the question that I was asking, is it the pink number, the reserve number that's sitting behind all the funds that could be expended up until June 30th? I would make a motion that we consider that if you have enough in reserve to cover what you're asking now. But if it's unspent from fiscal 26, I don't think we should, because we don't know what's gonna be the final number.
What we have is the number in pink, which is what these groups have, as I understand, left from 2026. Unspent,
That's
but 2020, so the pink is just what they have left in 2026. There's also a 2026 revised budget, which in some instances is saying larger, which is really what is the reserve. That's the 25 plus the 20, as I understand it. So they get to keep their money for 2 years, and if they haven't spent it, they lose it. So what they have in reserve is really what they have yet to spend from their 26 budget, plus anything they rolled over from 2025. Michael?
I fully agree that we get tremendous value from many talented and experienced volunteers who, as Alan suggested, could have plans in place to use all the money that the manager's budget requests for them additionally for the next fiscal year. Simply like to have somebody from one of those committees give us a few minutes of time to tell us the same thing.
All right, so to be clear, the committees we're talking about funding giving zero to are the Transportation Advisory Committee, Scenic Byway, Envision Arlington, Arlington Tourism and Economic Development, the Commission on Disabilities, Civilian Police Advisory Commission, Historical Commission, Human Rights Commission, the Open Space Commission. And I had a question, Carolyn, does Water Wise have those?
So I'm looking at the budget for this coming year that the manager put out. He wants to cut 10%. We have a small reserve. At the end of next year, it'll be 30,000, but remember, 30,000 is what we then spend for the next year. Our budget always goes across, but the amounts of fiscal years.
So I'm not going, what do they have in reserve now? Here, to get what they might use it for?
So what we use it for is what happens in July.
But what do they have right now? Do they have a reserve?
Yes.
How much?
It'll be about 30,000.
30.
Yes, and then that covers for July.
That would be less than. So this vote would not include water bodies. That's not to say we really want water bodies having a fund. Does everyone follow what we're doing? Any further discussion? All right, I'm gonna take Sophie's vote first. Sophie's motion first. And she is excluding from Charlie's motion the disabilities. All in favor of Sophie's motion, raise your hand.
I'm just for the accurate minutes, technically I do that with my motion, so we could.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you, Rebecca. All right. All those opposed to Sophie's motion, Rebecca's motion, raise your hand. Anybody staying? That passes. All right, now we'll take Charlie's motion, which is we are voting a zero appropriation for the groups I just listed, except for disabilities. Anybody have any questions about it? John?
So this is a fresh vote?
Yes.
So basically it's as if the vote didn't
Yes.
happen. Can I still?
Yes.
And But it's basically saying if you have any money, if you have money in your reserve in excess of what you're asking for, then,
If you have money left over, more than what you are asking for 27, you will get nothing unless you come in. And
thank you.
Good, use it.
all right, all in favor of Shelley's motion, raise your hand. Opposed? Any abstaining? All right, Charlie's motion fails. All right, now let's go through the committees and commissions that we want to come in. Those committees or commissions which is not approved right now, we'll vote for those committees and commissions that we are going to say no to, or different ones. All right, so let's start, I'm looking at page 199, budget book. All right, so with the Transportation Advisory Committee that asks for $1,800. Now, the options, as I said, are yes to 1,800, yes to another number, no, or gee, let's have them in and get more information. And when you're looking at this and considering this, remember that Julie Raymond has provided us with what some of these groups provided her in terms of budget information. All right. What do people feel about the transportation budget? Rebecca?
I move $1,800 for the transportation advisory committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor of 1,800 for TAP, raise your hand. Looks unanimous. Scenic byway. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't think they provided anything to Julie. I don't see a budget from them. People have an opinion about it.
I move we hold further consideration of this budget until we have someone speak to us from the committee.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of Michael's motion, raise your hand. Charlie, you up with it. All opposed, raise your hand. Two, any abstentions? We will bring in the scenic byway. Arts and culture.
Who's been working with them?
And
She's not here tonight.
so we're gonna get some information from them. Is there a motion to hold this?
I move the arts and culture budget and provide more information.
Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Envision Arlington. 1350.
Did you say 1350?
Yeah, right, $4,350.
I thought I heard 17.
anybody care about the condition Arlington budget? Right.
I move $1,350 for Conversion Arlington.
Is there a second?
Second.
They did provide some budget. All, any further discussion about condition Arlington? All right, all in favor of Rebecca's motion, raise your hand. All right, raise your hand again.
We've got to get you a dais about 18 inches higher so you can see over it.
Okay. 13 plus 13. 13 in favor, who, any opposed? Yeah, you would say. Right? Passes, tourism and economic development. $3,848. And they have a budget. Right.
I move that we support the manager at 2,848. Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Zero Waste Arlington at 2017. I have not seen a budget for that.
I move we accept the manager's recommendation. Second.
Any further discussion?
Because the number is small enough that we don't care to hear from the committee.
Well, so it's only a $300 drop, and in 2024, they spent under 2,000.
They did put in a request form.
What can they ask? Literally, they have it. Do they even know what the manager recommended?
Like acid.
Right. Do they even know that the manager took money off? I mean, this is a new manager, and this is totally new process.
All I have to do is make sure it's good for it.
We're informed, okay.
Essentially, they're gonna have to.
Right.
Do with what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, do you wanna say more about that? You wanna do offer us another motion?
I would move the whole Zero Waste Arlington until we hear from
Second.
Any further discussion on Zero Waste Arlington or on Michael's motion or maybe other?
Have they presented before to us?
Yeah. Thanks, Josh.
That's fine.
Point of clarification, we have
No.
recycling services on the committee requests.
I think that's.
Is that is your
That's,
request?
I'm assuming that's Zero Waste.
And they don't have more in reserves in their request. They have 111 less.
Right.
Just making sure. we can do it.
Right. All right, so we'll take Michael's motion first, which is come in, and if that fails, then we'll take the other motion. Everyone understand what we're doing now? All in favor of holding this budget until they come in and speak with us, or? All those opposed, raise your hand. Yes. Yes. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, I think Michael's motion prevails to have been. Link on disability, we have already decided that, hold that. Civilian Police Advisory Commission.
I move that we hold this until we can hear from them. But it's not clear who, it exists, yeah.
Right. Okay, there's second support this motion.
That's good.
Any further discussion on hold?
Then we should vote 0.
Is there a second motion? That's the second, Charlie's motion to vote zero.
There's time.
Based on the spaces in the line. And last year they weren't organized.
Is there a second to third one?
Second.
Actually, I'll withdraw my question.
Okay. All right, any further discussion on Charlie's motion to, incorporate zero?
I mean, I think you're right, Charlie, that we're not organized, but we give them 0 by they want to get organized either. So, I think it's one way of meeting. I think we're spending a lot of time talking about very little money, but we're going to spend more time on it when it's thought of it. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, that maybe we don't even know what they are, but they are more point by time meetings.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion to incorporate zero, been seconded, I understand. Any questions? All right, all in favor of Charlie's motion of zero on the civilian perspective, please raise your hand. Opposed? Seven, same. I vote. No. And I will entertain this motion. If you want to, motion to bring them in.
Yes.
Second? Second. All right, all in favor of bringing them in? Raise your hand. Yeah. Next is, historical commission. $7,830. Think they provided us some information. I think we care about that. Becca?
I move approval of the historical commission budget for $7,830.
I'll second.
It's saw what they provided us, and it was prospective. Here's what we intend to do. I don't know if they're really going to do it. I don't know if they have capacity to undertake the technical studies that they said they wanted to. I don't know if they looked for the consultant or the experts to facilitate that. I don't know if they have the capacity to spend the money the way they're telling us they intend to spend the money in the future, but haven't yet.
Anybody else?
I just want a clarification, is this, I'm having trouble moving through all the SharePoint documents, is this the HPC on study committee? Or is that one is the historic commission amongst the historic district?
There's the historical commission and the historic district commission.
So you said they had submitted documents, can you point me to where I would look for those, or what I should be looking at?
Yeah, I'm gonna call them up.
I don't think I see the budget, a separate line for historic commission. But in a document, I'm looking at,
Page 200 in the book.
you know, I see historical commission, and then I see Broadway historic districts, but I don't see historic district. I see a
That is
SharePoint
historic.
document called AHDC, which says that they have expected to spend $4,000 on the executive secretary stipends.
That's the historic commission.
That's a different commission.
Historical, that is the Broadway Historic District, which is the historic distribution. So the historical commission provides us something that looks like a letter.
So just coincidentally, they have almost the same budget request, for two different.
Budget,
In the letter with it, I'm sorry, the letter somebody that has access to.
yes.
You know, provided with the first two.
Is it this one?
I don't know.
That's the historic district commission, and then there's a letter from the historical. Right now, we're talking about the historical.
Okay.
David?
I just have a question, to refresh my memory. Why do we have a Broadway historic district? And we have other historic districts in the town.
It's just a bad name, it's actually the whole word, historic district.
Represented on seven.
Representing all, yeah. It's
So the
just-
inclusion of the word Broadway is a misnomer.
Forget Broadway.
Yeah, I was thinking Southern Street District, Mountain
Yeah,
Hall.
there's historic commission, historic district commission, separate, historic district commission is all the historic districts, Broadway is the bad name.
Okay, so we have before us, the historical commission request $77,000. Sure.
So, I'm looking at the wrong sheet here, but the table with the colors on it, I thought that it said they have $17,000 in their current account, right?
Yes.
So, and last year they came to us, if I recall, the prior, 3 years ago, 3 years this year, they had about a $2,000 budget, and they asked us to increase it dramatically, and we did. So they, somehow or another, they built up a $17,000 reserve, and now they're asking for another $8,000. Find that for what's at the current rate, you know, they will end up with $25,000. Unused.
A question on this 17,000, is some of that from 2 years ago and will get wiped off the books? They don't have 2 years to spend the money.
They have 2 years to spend the money, and then it goes away. And they roll what they haven't spent in 1 year, is rolled over to, but they've had money left over in 25, rolled over into 26. And that's what the revised budget, 26 is. All right, so we have, was there a motion to approve the historical commission's budget or not? You made that motion, and it was seconded, right?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion on the historical commission? All right, all in favor of Rebecca's motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All opposed, raise your hand. Any abstention? All right, so, that motion fails. Is there another motion regarding this?
I move to bring them in.
Second. Any further discussion? Karen? What? Any further discussion, yeah? All right, all in favor of bringing them in, raise your hand. Unanimous. The historic district Commission is next. And I see from Edith's year-to-date information is that they are 8%. They've gone to 8%. You have even less than what the word indicates they have. And they are looking for 7,200. If you people want to do it, okay.
I move $7,200 to the Historic District Commission.
Any further discussion?
So I just want to make sure I'm looking in the right place, because under the committee request, I had 8,000 for fiscal 27, not 17. I'm sorry, I'm looking on this one.
No.
The manager.
Just look at page 200. Thank you for 7,200.
They were looking at that. Oh, they were working with the rest.
All right, all in favor of 7,200 for Historic District Commission, raise your hand. All right, thank you. Okay, we're looking for $7,200.
I move, $7,200 we allocated from the Rights Commission. Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Perennial pension. $3,600.
We've got the manager's budget.
The manager's budget, was $3,600.
And we'll read that.
Oh, is there a second? I'll second. What do you think?
I have a different motion.
You have a different one?
They got it, since they didn't submit a request.
All right, so is there a second for Toby's motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor of?
Sorry, point of order. Could you repeat your motion?
Yeah, just, that we hold the budget and so.
Bring it in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of Daryl's motion, all in favor of approving the budget as proposed by the manager, raise your hand.
I'll withdraw mine.
Okay. All right, all in favor of Toby's motion, vote. Raise your hand.
There's only one motion available.
To hold. Unanimous. All right, the open space committee is the last. $900.
Move approval at $900.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of $900 for the open space committee, raise your hand. Unanimous. All right, fine, you're done. Commission. All right, I'll work with Matthias to get them in, people we have, for the whole year budgets, try to get them in at the end of February. All right. Done for that. There we go. All right, so the next thing is the finance committee budget. We did this. David, Sophie, you wanna?
Yes, I'm gonna refer to Sophie.
Yes. So you should have received in your emails a revised page. Basically, we're ready to, we fixed the $550 discrepancy that keeps coming up, so it shouldn't come up anymore in the future. And also on the salary for the salary portion, it was clarified that it's not a 0.2. There is no FTE. It's more like a stipend. So there was just some cleanup in the spreadsheets to make that happen. So the final finance committee total, I think, and Al Jones, you can check my math. I think it's 10,925, but I can't make any motions from Zoom.
So I'll make a motion to work on it. And so,
Second.
All right, so, we had voted, what was it, 11,475?
yes.
Now it is 10,925. First, I'll have a motion to consider, finance committee. All right, on favor of revisiting the finance committee budget, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
So
So,
we can take motion first.
maybe.
Okay.
So you, we have a motion to approve the finance committee budget at 10,900. That's not second, no?
Yes.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the finance committee's budget, 10,925, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, what's our next budget?
The budgets that Sophie and I are responsible for, we're gonna hold off the rest of them until the next meeting. We had some questions today with the manager's budget and also the development budget. Some have been answered, some haven't, and we're still waiting for answers on, I'd like to see the legal expense category broken down a little. It just says legal expenses, if we want to look. We know it's a lot of legal cases, but in addition to that, and we're waiting for that information, so we plan on having everything all out of the remaining of our but
Or is that big select board, the manager, legal, clerk?
for the elections and the board registrar.
How about planning?
Well, within that is the redevelopment board.
All right, who has a budget for us tonight? Rebecca?
I have rec, rank, and library.
Great.
All right, we will start with the rec department. Could I have my speaker? All right, so the recreation budget begins on page 167. So, just to review for our new colleague, the recreation department and the rink are in this sort of unusual category of our budgets, the less common category, because it's an enterprise fund. So you see a page for revenues, but also, or sorry, a page for expenses, but also a page for revenues, and those numbers need to match. They collect money to cover their expenses from user fees. Associated with that enterprise fund is also an account for their retained earnings. And that functions sort of like a savings account where they can use money in future years for recreation related expenses. We had some questions about the balance of retained earnings. It's currently at 1.2 million, and that's up from 1.0 million last year. During the years that I've reviewed the recreation budget for the last 4 years, it's fluctuated between 1.0 and 1.2 million. It's not accumulating. Some years they use more specifically for renovation, which we can talk about. But they're currently at 1.2 million in their retained earnings. And then they also have access to a revolving fund that they use to move money through that's directly related to a program. This becomes important in the discussion with budget because the current recreation director, Natasha Wade, her preference is to use the revolving fund only for new or old programs in the rec department. So she gave an example if they started a cross program, if they started a cricket, and they can't really predict very well what the expenses and the revenues will be. She runs those through the revolving fund, but her preference for transparency is for settled programs where they know what's going on, so like such as the preschool and the after school, she wants them back into the enterprise funds. So this becomes important when we look at the budget, because when we look at the expenses and the revenues, some of the items which appear to have gone up, particularly with the preschool, it's a matter of removing the money from the revolving fund and putting it in enterprise. Let's see, there's also, as we'll discuss in a second, some matter of moving money within the categories in ways that she feels is a little bit more transparent. So the largest element in the budget is salaries, so we'll start with the salary detail page. The only significant change, or the only real change to this budget, or the salaries rather, the personnel, is that where previously there were 2 administrative positions associated with aftercare, they were called co-director of after school last year. There were 2 co-directors, and they promoted 1 co-director to be called the director of kid care after school, and they've left 1 co-director now as the assistant director for the kid care after school, and there's a new position called the site coordinator for the after school. They have right now 108, they have 104 children in the after school program, and a capacity of 108. So, yeah, as I said, their largest expenses are salaries, but also a lot of their employees are temporary or part-time. So you see, salaries temp. Oh, sorry, not anymore. Kid care after school salaries and kid care preschool salaries refer to those temporary or part-time people. Yeah, specifically, if you look at preschool salary, it looks like there's a significant increase, right? They went from no budget for preschool salaries to 210,000, but that's an example of moving that, some of that money from the revolving fund, but also moving some of that money from lower down. There is a line item that says kid care preschool, and it shows a drop of 100,000. So again, these are primarily rate level changes. We had some question about R&M, repairs and maintenance contracted services. So the recreation department has pretty recently moved to the Parmenter building, and that has presented a number of challenges. They have their preschool there, they have their after school there, they also have their offices there. And she says it's taken a bit of time to figure out their actual costs, but there are additional costs that they pay for Parmenter that they did not need when the rec department was in the rec building. We had also a question about the software credit card fee. That's about 40% of the way down of 85,000. So in the past summer, they moved over to accepting credit cards at their point of sale locations. So previously, if you wanted to sign up for a rec department program online, you could use a credit card, but if you showed up in person, paid in like or at the reservoir or something like that, you only paid in cash. They moved over to accepting credit cards, and so that means their credit card fees that they pay have increased. She's very happy with that though, because she feels that it's a much better way to do accounting to be accepting credit cards rather than trying to keep track of cash and making sure that everyone's paying for all of the things that they should be paying for. And then another notable increase that you might notice is right near the bottom, transportation services. The budget went from 50,000 to 100,000. So this refers to busing expenses for taking elementary school children from the elementary schools to the Parmenter. So previous years, the after school was located at the Gibbs. So they could use town school buses to first take elementary school children after elementary school to Gibbs, and then use the same buses to take the Gibbs children home. But since the after school has moved to Parmenter, you don't have access to the town school buses, and they're using New Bedford Charter. She's not happy with that level of expenses, and she's looking for ways to cut. We asked for an update on the reservoir. They said for the reservoir, their expenses and revenue are both up. They had a really good season with the reservoir. As I mentioned, they have the credit card systems helping them have better record keeping. They've had concerts and events with good attendance. And they are overall, she said, have gone up a little bit on prices and specifically have a new non-resident rate for passes. So they're charging people who don't live in town higher rates for season passes.
Glad to hear that. My personal experience was that Reds was extremely popular in the greater Boston area.
Yeah, it's good for out of town people to pay for there. And one thing she'd like to try with the reservoir is experimenting with holding events there in the fall. We had a question on field permit fees. If we now look at the revenue section, we had a question on field permit fees. She said that field fees have not gone up lately. The per user fee has not gone up, but they are collecting them from more users because the high school fields have come back online. And she expects that they may get even more users now that the high school fields are available. They do charge lower fees for public school participation than for private schools and youth groups. And she definitely anticipates that in conjunction with the town manager, they really do need to figure out this situation. They're planning to increase them for FY27, but they have not committed to how much yet. And that would specifically help them to raise money that covers the portion of the DPW budget, which is related to playground and field maintenance. We also had a question of what is the department's plan for funding maintenance of CPA funded projects, specifically, and the question was Hills Hill and the skate park. And to that, she said that funding for maintenance of the CPA projects is challenging because many of those don't actually generate income, right? If you just have a bicycle park, kids show up with their bicycles, they don't pay each time they come. So what they're trying to sort of in their brainstorming phase for this, they're considering a couple of things. One would be if you offered programs at those locations, like you had someone offer workshops or mountain biking lessons or whatever that is. If a outside group ran a program at those facilities, you could charge for that. And then also if you had a friends group that either helped directly do the maintenance or helped raise money for the maintenance. She said that this is something they're actively discussing with the manager's office. They don't have a solution, but she said they're trying to be mindful of this when applying for funding. So with that, I would move the recreation budget with revenues of $3,306,574 and expenses of $3,306,574. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
What was I gonna ask about now? Fields, for the fields, do we charge people who rent the fields, that aren't town sports? So town teams that use private organizations that use the fields, who are town-based, whether they travel or whether
Yes.
are they charged less than other organizations, like adults?
I do not believe so. I didn't ask that specifically. The only discount that I'm aware of is for the public. But I could ask them.
They're on a multi-tier program. Because the parents are already paying the taxes.
Oh, you say, sorry. So, do you have the historical surplus trend?
So I looked into this, and the issue is, if you were to look back even to 2021, say, the entire budget for the rec department was only $1 million. So they've had a significant increase in their programs. This whole preschool is new, the after school is new. I have a new director. So I didn't actually look that closely into how much their retained earnings have changed because I think they're running a very different department.
So,
You know what I mean?
whatever the shape of the department, do we just know how much either surplus or deficit they've run in the past? They've been an enterprise fund for how long?
I wouldn't say they've consistently run a surplus or deficit, so at the beginning I said their retained earnings have fluctuated between 1 million and 1.2 million.
Yeah.
And so, so this year, for example, they're planning to spend 145,000 out of that retained earnings. The previous year, 279,000 out of the retained earnings. Depending on what their needs are, they pull from it.
Yeah.
But it's neither.
Does it go to a deficit at all?
They can't have a deficit, they have $1 million, 1.2.
I'm just picking up on Feeney's comment, which was if we convert it from an enterprise fund to department, we gotta cover the loss if there's a loss. Versus there's always a surplus. We're trying to make the point that there's always a surplus. So we could convert it.
I wouldn't say they quite run a surplus in the sense that they do have a balance fund. So some years they put money into retained earnings and some years they take money back. I think there's also an important thing to keep in mind, which is, by law, when we collect fees, the fees have to be related to the service that we provide. So if you collect rec department fees, you really can very carefully make sure that they're paying for everything related to the program, but you can't just use it to prop up the debt.
Right. I have a second question. Is that okay? Does the capital expense in the school budget for playgrounds?
Yes, so so Chuck sent me this question ahead of time, but the schools are also paying for playground maintenance. The reasons I don't fully understand, the school likes to be in charge of their playgrounds and the town likes to be in charge of their playgrounds. Right now, the rec department does not feel that they have a lot of extra money kicking around to volunteer for new maintenance projects. So they're not looking to voluntarily take on maintenance of the school playgrounds, given that they feel that they have a backlog of maintenance that needs to be done at, for example, Spy Pond, it's not associated with.
All right, thank you.
Topher, then John.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So just a comment on all maintenance. Particular CPA projects, which, come out and things. I think the department needs to look at the budget items to do this. Volunteers cannot do some of the stuff that's going to be needed when it's large structures and and I'm not quite sure, an outside group come in and charge money, just quite how that works, but I think it's good that they know about it or they're acknowledging it. But I think they need to really come down to the bar and say, look, we need a budget item for this. Like, this is stuff that's not going away, it's happening. I just don't think, you'll get some trash in us on volunteers, but I don't think they'll get else.
Yeah, they can't.
And they're not just sitting there like, pulling up boulders or whatever.
Yeah, she definitely seemed aware of it, and she said that there are discussions with the manager's office of where to get that money.
Good.
John?
Yeah, thank you. Two questions. I think you mentioned both of these, just to clarify. The first, so as far as the salaries, there's no detail on the kids care after school salary and kids care preschool salaries. That's just because there's a lot of temps or
They're part-time people,
part-time,
yeah, and after school, people who work from, 3 in the afternoon.
yeah, so a lot of different people making up those numbers.
And also, frankly, they're around turnover.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then maybe following up on Topher, you mentioned that there's no specific programs associated with maintenance of certain items, specifically items that CPA is funding. Can you be a little more specific? Like, are we talking about a certain park or a certain project?
So the Topher's original question about the CPA projects was for Hills Hill and for the skate park, right? So if you look at something like, the baseball diamond, then the baseball teams do use baseball diamond, and we can use that to take care of baseball diamond. The rink is the obvious one, right? But if no one's paying to come to a mountain biking park or a skate park, you don't have designated money just for that facility.
So So, I don't know, but there's no unmet needs right now, these are future unmet needs, in other words, anticipating that these projects may need maintenance in the future, or is there unmet needs right now?
He didn't mention specific.
Cause I don't think the skate park exists, but I don't think it does, cause it was just approved like a year.
No, it exists.
Yes, it does.
You might be thinking of the bicycle track through Eagles. That recently.
Yeah, maybe I think here, because we had the skate park here forever and ever, but then, CPA approved, I think $1 million plus for a new skate park. I have a feeling we're talking about the old skate.
Was that
Well, actually, I was, it was sort of,
Yeah.
those don't exist now.
Yeah. There's issues, unmet needs.
Yeah.
So there's unmet needs.
Over.
Okay.
And, you know, but it's, the skate park, I'm saying, it can come up, I think there's an approval last year, $500,000 to do new concrete slab, but there's some like, they need more money after that.
Yeah.
So at some point that will get done, I suspect.
Yeah. So these.
And then they'll, you know, get wear and tear, the grade, whatever.
So basically, projects that there exist and possibly expanding, need to be maintained and there's no budget right now.
The mountain bike cap is, those features are mostly packed dirt.
Yeah.
So like, okay, concrete may take longer to degrade the state park, but these things are starting to happen.
Sure.
And, you can see that there's some cases of people just like digging up other parts of the park to bring dirt over there or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a massive, it's just like.
It's the old thing, like everyone shows up for the ribbon cutting ceremony, but then like the year later when it needs to be.
Well, it was brought up in the debate on the project.
Of course.
So, volunteers.
Yeah, she also mentioned electricity, see the electricity.
I'm talking about revenue.
Oh, in revenue, sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm just wondering how they can incorporate
So they, I'm just pulling up a little,
that.
exactly, a little bit, small, tiny spreadsheet, right? So they have a pretty stable number of kids in the preschool. Yeah, their revenue for the after school and preschool together is $960,000. And their expenses are $958,000. They had a rapid increase in number of kids in the preschool, but then now they expect it to be flat. There's a huge demand for preschool and after school in town.
Well, what I'm looking at here though is fiscal 26, the budget.
Yeah.
Versus fiscal 27. In those two categories, there's $150,000 increase.
In revenues.
Yeah, in revenue. And then the next line, in the kid care preschool, there's an increase of $135,000. But, I mean, that's a forecast, right?
So these are the numbers that she has based on the kids who are currently enrolled. a lot of the preschool money used to go through the revolving funds.
Okay, that was.
And it would pay, exactly, it would pay through like construction or electricity,
So this-
for example,
this is
but
just-
she says this is to make it more
This is
transparent,
a
these are
real-
real,
Good one,
yes.
thank you.
Anything else, Charlie?
No, it's all.
Michael and then Paul?
Rebecca, that's a really aggressive prediction in jump in reservoir income from 180,000 to 250,000. And want to believe it, you know, the actual from 2025 of 263,000 is, you know, a greater degree of reliability on the 250 projected. How do you feel about it?
I think that's fair, I mean, she said they're having a terrific year, that they, you know, a lot of parts of the reservoir have been redone. It's become very popular, and then, yeah, as we just said, the actual in 2025 was 263, so no reason to think 250 isn't reasonable.
That's good news.
Paul?
So what happens to the revolving fund? Is there balance in there that?
The town manager and the comptroller oversee that, as I understand it. And there are restrictions in how much they're allowed to have there at the end of the year. Perhaps someone who remembers the details,
We
in line
vote on it at
10,000 or
the
something at
town
the end of the
meeting,
year.
there's a number per year for every revolving fund.
Yeah, so they can't just accumulate vast amounts of money.
But is there, I mean, presumably the annual use of it is gonna go down dramatically.
Correct, if the money goes through the enterprise fund, it will not go through the revolving.
And is there a balance in it that was sort of expected it when we voted it like at the last town meeting, it expected to be used that balance. And then
So my understanding is we can't maintain a large balance in the revolving fund. And so I don't know the timing of how the money goes through revolving or enterprise funds. I didn't ask about this. She and the town manager seem comfortable with this.
Carol, anything else?
How are playgrounds that aren't, because there's a playground at every park, which is different from the school. So how are these maintained? Which budget do those come out of?
So the DPW has a budget for it, and then big things need to be done, it comes through capital.
That makes sense.
But not enough, I mean, I would like to see a lot more.
Yeah, just a quick answer to that is they are making it.
Right.
I'm wondering, these big, increase in revenue, is it possible that that's, I don't see where if you're stopping or reducing the use of the revolving fund, that seems money's probably coming out of the revolving fund. And I'm wondering if that's being counted as revenue in these programs.
That's right, so it should also, similar amounts, similar increases should show up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let me misunderstand. So these large increases in, you know, the kid care and the $150,000, $70,000 increases from the reservoir, is it possible that some of that increase is money that's being used in the revolving fund? I don't see any revenue item for money coming out of the revolving.
So I
So those are
don't,
baked into some of the other numbers.
so the reservoir, I don't believe the reservoir has the same revolving fund enterprise fund issue as, say, the preschool. She specifically mentioned in the context of the preschool, now that the preschool is a stable program, we're not running it through the revolving fund, but rather through the enterprise fund.
So if the revolving fund had a significant balance, is it possible that some of the increase in revenue in the kids' care and preschool is money being drawn? I'm just wondering, I guess what I'm saying is this a real projection of increase in fees, or is this money that's being pulled out?
This is mostly not an increase in fees.
Or let's say usage.
It is mostly, not having the money through the revolving fund, but grant.
Is the revolving fund balance gonna change between now and next year?
So my
Are they using
understanding
it
is
more
end
than
of the year, so the point of a revolving fund is meant to be that, you know, if this is zero, you take money in, you spend it, you take money in, you spend it,
Right.
you take money in, you spend it.
But if he's using it less, how does that impact
Then
that?
you'll see this.
Okay, it's not gonna change the
So we're
balance.
not taking preschool tuition and preschool teachers and after school tuition and after school teachers, we're taking a lacrosse clinic and then a lacrosse teacher and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Smaller revenues
Okay,
and
so
smaller.
I guess what I'm hearing is that the increase, these large increases in revenue are actual projections of increases in fees and their usage fees, users. I mean, real revenue, not,
It's real revenue,
not
but
just coming
she's
out of-
comfortable with it.
okay, no,
So they're not expecting a lot more kids in, say, the preschool or the after
Yeah.
school. They increased due to the new building and now they're pretty stable.
okay, so it's real revenue, it's not using saved money, that's.
It's not saved money,
Okay.
that's right.
Another, just sort of point of information, the insurance is budgeted at 7.85%, and the number that managed using is 11.25%, so, but it's a lot up in the air, because GIC is making some program changes. But I think everybody should know that we'll probably have to revisit all the enterprise funds soon, sometime after the insurance are collected, because these numbers, it's only probably $5,000-6,000 difference. Probably have to review this. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the right side of the budget? All right, I think, we want to second, so all in favor of the budget, $3,306,574, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Okay, so similarly, the Ed Burns Arena, which starts on page 169, is an enterprise fund, but a much smaller enterprise fund. Their current balance in retained earnings is $89,000 compared to $104,000 last year. One of the items on their revenue page is use of retained earnings. We do plan to spend $25,000 of their retained earnings this year, but she's hoping to not need to use retained earnings in FY28. There's no significant changes to the salaries or anything like that. Overall, they have a very slight decrease in expenses and revenues. One of the main things she said that they've had a lot of progress in, similarly to rec department using credit cards instead of cash. She thinks that that's helped with their accounting. She said they're also working on some policies around advertising and user fees, make sure that they're really collecting all of the fees that they need to collect, that people aren't sort of, getting away with using the facility without paying what they're meant to pay. She did say that they're looking maybe in the future to using the rink more in the non-ice months. So there could be some sports that might want to use indoor space just on a large flat, sort of court space without ice on it.
It's good. Purple.
I believe that's, the only thing I wanted to point out also was if you look at the debt principal amount, which is about 90% of the way down, that is down significantly, and that is due to the fact that that debt is related to renovations and handicapped accessibility to the rink, and that is being paid off. So as it gets paid off, that debt principal line is going down. Other than that, no significant changes. So I move the rink department budget with $154,620 in revenue and $654,620 in expenses.
Carolyn?
Why do they think the natural gas bill is gonna come down that much? Do they do more insulation or something?
So the natural gas is weirdly related. So the natural gas actually mostly goes through dehumidifier.
Okay.
And then there's some of heating of the space, which is not an ice rink, right? So like rooms and offices and things like that. So, if you look, it had the budget had kind of spiked. And I think that they were concerned about what they were gonna need for dehumidifiers. And then weirdly, when we have this cold weather, then you don't need to run a bunch of dehumidifier. So
And are they using the offices for something else now?
I have not asked.
Okay. Because if they're not using those, they're not being those.
Yeah, I don't know.
Any other companies on the, Charlie and Mike?
So, on the capital and, capital debt and principal and interest. In addition to handicap accessibility, they have an ongoing, requirement for capital support there, as I recall. One is, my mind's drawing a blank, but what's the machine you use to clean the exit? And then volumes go every year, you know. And there's a big, refrigeration, set of equipment. And as I recall, there's also some, I can't remember the exact name, but like electric power conversion system to supply the refrigeration. And they were pretty expensive. I don't know if they're planning to maintain those or replace them or what, but.
So sort of the barrier for resistance is the fact that we don't own that building, but we're responsible for all of these things, like the refrigeration system and the, So yeah, I don't know what's in their sort of capital plans for the future of if they're gonna need to borrow money in the future for any of those things. She didn't mention any, she did mention that they have a concern about their roof. That in the future, they're going to need to re-roof the rink, but that isn't something that's in this. So yeah, I know they're very aware of the maintenance on the refrigeration system.
Molly and Jones.
Just had a question on the health insurance line. It's a 30% increase. Did she say anything about that?
So, I asked Julie about that because that is a significant increase and I have not heard back yet. I suspect she will get back to me. What I've heard is that typically, I have no information about this particular budget, but typically that kind of a thing, when you don't have a change in the personnel, but you do see an increase like that, it often refers to one of the employees going on town insurance who previously was covered, say, under a spouse's policy or a parent's policy. I don't know the specifics of that one, but that's what it usually refers to is, given that we don't have new employees.
So they're under the town policy, they're not their employees would be covered.
So this is to show that the rink has to pay for the health insurance of their own employees. It's this thing we talked about of that even though it's an enterprise, because it's an enterprise fund, it needs to pay for all of it. So they do get town health insurance, but we pay for it through that one.
Jones and then Charlie.
Sorry if I missed it, what's the retained earning balance?
The retained earnings is $89,000. No. Charlie?
Yes, a little bit of a quirk here on the insurance is that, you could have a big jump in insurance without changing the profile of the employees, because if some employees retire, they're still on the insurance program, they're on a retirement program, but that in the other departments, you don't see it, it just gets blended into the whole thing, but in enterprise fund, that goes back into the enterprise fund and shows up. So you're paying here, you're seeing here both the active employees and retirees.
And then OPEB is where someone not under an enterprise fund, that's where they would be reflected.
No, OPEB could also be a recreation employee. Other post-employment benefits, that's health insurance for retirees.
Right.
It's just that in other departments, you don't see it you don't see the retirees called out. They sort of roll out into some sort of a ether. And then the charges roll up in the insurance budget, but they get transferred specifically into each enterprise.
Thank you.
Alex Hosty.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering about the balance, and forgive me, have a little trouble hearing everything. But it looks like you've got over $75,000 in deficits the last 2 years. So is that been wiped out by surpluses in years past? So what's the balance at the end of fiscal 25?
The balance in the currently the retained earnings have 89,000. I'm not sure what you're saying when you say that there's a deficit of 75.
Well, I'm looking at the last 2 years of actuals. And one year there was a $41,000 deficit, and the next year there was a $35,000 deficit. So that's where I come up with the $75,000 of deficits over the last 2 years.
That's not additive.
I'm sorry?
They're not additive. It's a balance, so it's not additive.
Okay, so you're sending, there's still a surplus in that enterprise fund?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the budget? All right, there's been a motion, secondly, to approve the rate budget at 654,620. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes. You say you have a library?
I have a library, let's talk about the library. So the library budget starts on page 131.
Sure.
Oh, thank you, could you show us the first slide with content, the next one after this? Thank you. There are some slides that I emailed around and put on SharePoint. They're not entirely necessary for this presentation, but can give you some background information if you're curious. This is a slide from the library director, Anna Litton, who's always extraordinarily responsive to us. We really appreciate her cooperation. This just shows you how much people in Arlington value the library. So the library budget this year is actually extremely straightforward. By far the largest component of the budget is salaries. And this becomes important if we're going to talk about what we do in the event that an override didn't pass. Their salaries are up about 4%, or the total personnel expenses are up about 4% over last year, primarily due to COLA increases and steps. If we look at the salary detail page, I want to point out just a couple of things. First off, the total personnel count at 31.47 is down by 0.2 from last year. So last year was 31.67. And this is because she decided to use a half-time circulation position. She eliminated that position when the person left the department and instead started a position of team librarian that's about halfway down and currently listed as vacant. Team librarian at 0.34. So the libraries are looking at ways that they can use the fact that people like to do self-checkout, they like to renew their books online, and go back to think about moving their staff less from handling books and checking things out manually and more towards actually services for people. So she gave the example that, when they had an early release from school, the teen section of the library was absolutely mobbed. So currently that teen librarian position, which is the only new position, is vacant due to the hiring freeze. But that's something that she really thinks will be valuable. One thing I also want to point out about the salary detail page is, the first column shows the last name of the current employee, the second column is the previous person. There was a copy paste error. So all of those previous people, these are not just previous people from the last budget cycle. They're people who may have left, 2 years ago. So this page suggests a lot more turnover than there has actually been. A bunch of those lines, they show a new person and an old person, and it's exactly the same as last year's budget book. So if you were to look at it, you'd see that there's much less turnover than this suggests. So as I mentioned, the teen librarian position that's currently vacant, that's subject to the hiring freeze, and they have not filled it. There are also 2 vacant library assistant positions that they that are subject to the hiring freeze. And then one library assistant was filled right before the hiring freeze was announced. So one that's currently listed as vacant has actually been filled. Those are the only personnel changes. If you look at the library expenses, there's very, very few changes, with the exception of a $50,500 drop in library materials. So, this is because the Arlington Library Foundation was able to hire a part-time development director for the first time this year. And this has helped the Arlington Library Foundation have a very successful year with their annual appeal. They had a lot more giving and 2 large gifts. And so they've been able to raise their annual donation to the library. Previously, they were giving in the range of between $90,000 and $100,000 a year, and this year they anticipate giving $150,000 to support materials. So this drop of $50,000 in materials is being covered by the Arlington Library, which is the other small decreases are just decreases in office supplies and technology supplies in accordance with requests. So the budget was pretty straightforward, so most of our conversation was focused on what would happen in the event of a failed override. So Makai, do you mind showing the slides again? So just as a review, the library does spend quite a bit of money that does not appear in here because it comes from outside sources. And so the library director provides us with this slide. This is the numbers from FY 26 actually. Yeah, so the largest piece of the pie chart is what comes from the town, and then you also see money from these other sources. And from the next slide, please. The next slide shows what those things pay for, but this is a lot of like the objects that the library has, like books, and then an enormous amount of electronic resources. Mm-hmm. And databases and that sort of, and then also programs. So right now, the tax money is mostly not going towards those things, it's overwhelmingly going towards salaries. We talked about, I think it's the next slide, please, Makai. We talked about what would, sorry, one more, that's just if people want details of what all of those things refer to. We talked about what would happen if you wanted to close the Fox Library and how much money you could make from that. So the library director does say that the Fox Branch Library is very well used, especially by young people, and especially people in East Arlington. We have the next slide, please. But if you needed to close it for budgetary reasons, you could make about $208,000. There would be some small reduction also in the facilities budget, which wouldn't appear here, but not a total decrease in the facilities budget because, if you own the building, even if it's not being used, it has a certain amount of repairs and, they've had terrible flooding and things like that in the Fox Library. So unless we sold the Fox Library, we'd still have to do a certain amount of the repairs and maintenance. But you could make about $200,000 if you were to close the Fox entirely.
Also $70,000 in revenue for Fox.
That's right. So the Fox and Robbins shop gives us $40,000. That says their Fox offset $40,000 towards salaries, and then another $70,000 that goes towards programs and materials and things like that. Yeah. So you wouldn't have the programs and the materials, and you also wouldn't have the so she said that's not enough. If the manager were requesting a 12% cut, you would necessarily need to have it hit the Robbins as well, and that would mean staffing decreases. We talked about whether there was a possibility of, let's imagine just keep the library open the same number of hours, but have fewer staff there. She said that's not how libraries work, that they need those people there just to do the work of moving the books around, but also you have a certain staffing need associated with just kind of safety. You can't have a large building like that with an inadequate staff. Another thing that has to be kept in mind with libraries and budget cuts is something called they call it the MAR, the MAR is the municipal appropriations requirement. So the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners sets this minimum that we're required. We're just talking about the MAR, Annie, for the libraries. So they have this minimum level of funding that needs to come from the town in order for them to be sort of in good standing with the state. So they're able to get, in principle, if we fell below that, and Anna does believe that we would fall below our minimum if we had to make a 12% cut. In principle, we could apply for a waiver. She seems to think that we would be eligible for this waiver. The state does give 3 to 8 of these waivers a year. We're not the only community facing budget cuts. However, you can only get a waiver 3 years in a row. So it is meant to cover, like we're having a little emergency, our library funding drop, we're gonna come up with a solution. You can't indefinitely be on a waiver. Eventually, if you fall below this minimum, you will lose access to state aid and the library could become decertified. And what that means is that the other libraries wouldn't lend to Arlington residents. You could walk into another library and use that library, but you couldn't check things out. They wouldn't send us, you couldn't request a book that lives in your library. And we would give some access to some. Quiet. We would lose access to some electronic resources that are owned by other libraries. So with that said, Anna is looking into what the process is for applying for a waiver in the event that the override fails and we do have to make this cut and we do fall below our MAR. She wants to know what that process entails, so she's going to learn about the waiver so that she's not caught out if it comes to that. She also mentioned that if we were to have to eliminate positions, the first thing that they would do is, start with the unfilled positions and then move to part-time, people who are part-time, and see how far they could go with that. So with that, I will move the library budget in the amount of $3,010,325. Second.
Any questions about the library?
Just sort of, one question, the Fox and Robin drop earns $111,000.
Correct.
Is that mostly based on use of the Fox library? I'm just wondering if
It is inside the Fox library, so if you close the Fox, you have to close the shop.
so the loss would be more than 40,000, it'd be 111,000.
Yes, however, the 111 is 40,000, so sorry, the rest of that goes towards materials and programs that take place at the Fox library. So you lose the money, but they would be, that's money that
That you
they're
would spend.
currently, that's right.
Okay, so then the other question is, the 40,000 salary offset shows up in the budget, but the other 110,000 doesn't. Why is the 40,000 treated as an offset and the others not?
Because it goes towards salaries. So the charitable entity that is the Fox and Robin's shop, gives us 40,000 towards salaries.
Right,
And then,
and the manager's budget line, it doesn't, 40,000 isn't in the salary line, it's at the bottom line. Okay, I just think we're gonna be more transparent, we show the whole offset.
If you look at the other slides that Rebecca has shown, you look at all the sources.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll notice there's a lot of off-budget sources.
Yeah.
That's all essentially grant funding, foundation funding, fundraising, that's all off budget. It's not part of the general fund, can't be spent somewhere else, et cetera. It's only used for non-salary expenses. And so the rest of the Fox Library's fundraising is only used for non-salary expenses and is considered similarly a grant. So none of our grants appear in the budget in any of our departments. They all have them.
Okay, it's inconsistent with much transparency, but it's okay.
Well, it's weird.
It's not showing us what the budget's it doesn't show us what the libraries really cost us.
Well, that's why we present the slides.
Yeah, our recommendation, just for sake of transparency, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have the full amount as the offset and decrease some of the, and increase some of the expenses to what they really are.
But why would you treat the Fox Shop receipts differently than you treat the Arlington foundations or the trust funds or other grant funds that go into other departments that also don't show up on budget?
Well, I agree with you, that's a different discussion. We're talking about.
Right, there's a reason, the logic here is that the 40,000 is going to salaries, so like, we have state money that we show as offsets in HHS, cause it's going to salaries.
Right, so we're not representing what the libraries really cost, we're saying, we're representing the net except for the 40,000.
In our budget,
It doesn't impact
yes.
the budget, it impacts the code.
Yeah, in our budget, that's true, that's why we provide the slide with the additional sources.
Right.
So we know.
Well, but the town doesn't, like library materials is, reflects a decrease of 50,000.
Yeah.
But we're really not suffering a $50,000 loss, because it's made up by the other companies that.
We're not. We're not suffering a $50,000 loss. And we could, in our presentation to town meeting, we could clarify that, or we could clarify it as when we present the budgets, I'm happy to stand up and ask the question and get the answer. For town meeting clarification.
Well, then the question I, tell me would have, why isn't finance committee budget more transparent?
Right. I mean, town meeting only votes on the bottom line, but in terms of transparency, it might be.
Right, I guess what I'm suggesting is we have this transparency department all over the budget, not just in the library. So, do we want to change policy for every department?
We can start with the library. Sorry.
I think you should start with the police department.
Thank you, I'm done.
Any other questions about the library?
I just have a comment. I think Mike was ahead of me.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
Who sets the policy on the amount of the trust fund payment? Rebecca.
Sorry?
Who sets the policy on the trust fund payment?
Well, as I said, I think it's just trying to say that, of the library.
Do we know what like metric they're using for?
No, it's not under our oversight.
Sounds like it's under their grace,
Excuse me?
under their grace, right? Whatever they decide to do, it's their decision. And
I would suggest that if the trust funds, they're regulated under the contribution based on selling investment policy. To not, eat up the principal, but to only provide funding out of income of the funds. And usually that's something like a limit or 3 or 5 or 8% of the total amount of trust funds can be used in a given year. So.
anything else, Nathan?
Nothing.
Just a comment, in years past, when there was a shortfall of funds, they closed 2 libraries. One was the Down, which is now housed at ACMi, and one was Fox. And they closed it, and there was a tremendous outcry to reopen the Fox, and it took a few years. But the Fox has been closed before due to budgetary stress.
Yeah. And they haven't reopened the one on Heights at all.
No, that's right, but I was basically, there wasn't much of a blowback on the closing down as much as there was the Fox.
Carol?
Just the same comment. I'm a kid who went to the Dallin Library. And we were able to easily switch to Robbins, but living in East Arlington, I see how many parents with strollers go and with toddlers and preschoolers in tow going in and out of that library, plus adults. It's also amazing how many adults go in and out of it. And because East Arlington is flat, it makes for a really great place to be able to just walk to from anywhere in East Arlington.
Any other questions about the library budget? Comments from the motion for $3,10,325. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, Rebecca. Do we have any other budgets? Right. No more budgets. All right, who will have budgets on Wednesday, David? You have sort of single inspections. Annie, what do you have?
HHS.
HHS. Go for it.
Assessment.
Fire. Fire, I think. All right, so we'll have a busy night. Wednesday night.
question.
We'll meet here, we have this room, so we're gonna meet here on Wednesday, parking is still a wreck, police department, not that this is much better, but it's still better. So we'll meet here Wednesday night, and we have a lot of budgets, and we'll just hit the ground running at 7:30. And knock them off. Anybody have anything, Paul, and then Jeff?
So the 5-year plan that was handed out, last meeting, the school budget dropped. $300,000 or something like that. Does anyone know why that dropped?
They dropped, they agreed to go down 4% growth. Scott.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that in terms of the schools, Charlie can send us some questions, if you can do that question. For the modern, solid, rather than taking it a little bit.
Anything else?
Question is up to.
Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.